Well, thank you so very much, Michael, for the great introduction. As you said, my name is Sarah Lindquist. I am the ADI National Representative with Macurco Gas Detection located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I would like to let you know what a privilege it is here today to be involved with this. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Macurco Gas Detection's National Sales Manager and Hazardous Specialist. He's also my boss. He has been with the organization for 6 years and is considered an expert in what he does. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce Branden Doing. He will be presenting today's information. Branden?
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. Today's topics are pretty key in today's industries on the fixed gas detection side, especially in up and coming applications, very common applications. We've become pretty innovative with some new product releases, all found in ADI's repertoire. So we'll be covering those topics today. For those that don't know Macurco, long story short, we were kind of the entrepreneurs with gas detection back in the early 70s. Had some smoke options along with it. We bailed out of smoke in the 80s and stuck to gas detection, and that's what we've been ever since. So if you guys have any questions on anything gas detection oriented before or after during this call, please let us know. We'd be glad to help. But moving right along, just a couple things we're going to go over today. Just who we are, a little bit of that, the importance of gas detection. A lot of it's legislated, common applications, the product along with it, and then a couple of specific applications, specifically the grow facilities and the vehicle exhaust. I will touch on an application we did not put in here, but it is something that all ADI is getting information on currently, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I'll be answering questions along the way. If you guys have any, feel free to put questions in the Q&A box, or we can go at the end as well. So moving on, Macurco Gas Detection is based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's where Sarah and I myself are at currently. Basically the heart of the country, if you will. Not a ton of people, but there's a lot of animals and there's a lot of land, and that's about all there is in South Dakota. So if you ever make your way out here, Mount Rushmore is the key one. It's on the western side of the state, so it's about 5 hours away from us. But for anybody that hasn't been here, it's actually really pretty country. So importance of gas detection, just so you know, we're considered a life safety company. Everything we do is protecting people along with property. And the reason why we protect property is a lot of these gases are explosive. So we're trying to save money and means based upon those gases not becoming combustible and, facilities blowing up. Those that are on the Northeast coast, especially Massachusetts, residences are having old pipelines going through the neighborhoods. Well, houses, they've had some issues over the past 2 years, and that's exactly what we're after. We're targeting those gases. Toxic levels, how they can impact somebody, oxygen depletion. And then when we get into a little bit more on the product line, it also comes in terms of savings on energy efficiency side, also on the refrigerant side. So a lot of these legislative moves, whether you're in California or all the way in New York, doesn't matter. They're driven off of code and legislation to prevent wasted energy or loss of life. So those are both two key materials we look at. Common applications. On the left there, you're going to see a lot of vehicle exhaust. You'll see a lot of the common thread with anything that's a diesel truck, a standard vehicle, any kind of loading dock facility. We're talking Amazon's, FedEx, UPS. Those are probably key territories for us right now. We're seeing a lot of those opportunities pop up pretty much weekly. And then you get in the middle and you start seeing some things that you're probably not too familiar with. But when we talk about hotels, it's very general, but any kind of boiler room, mechanical room in a commercial area or industrial area, typically you'll see some type of gas detector, whether that's for CO or combustible gas. They are legislated. A lot of states, especially on the West Coast or East Coast right now, are mandating all boiler rooms in a commercial building have some type of a CO or LEL monitor, depending on the state. But as you go down that list, you'll see laboratories, restaurants, schools, and then on the far right, you get into more of the light industrial / heavy industrial stuff. And then with that, we do have product offering for everything. I just want to let you know, if you go into an industrial sector, we do have product for that type of a scenario. It's sold a little bit differently. It's built a little bit differently. It's a class one div one explosion proof model. So I just want you to know we do have everything available there. The types of gases that we're really going to be referring to today are going to be in the 6 and 12 series. That's what we call our family of products. It's a low voltage line, which is the 6 series, and then a line voltage line in the 12 series. They're commercial grade, commonly found again in parking garages, vehicle exhaust, boiler rooms, labs, those kind of places. Going from top to bottom, pretty much you have the most common, and that's carbon monoxide. That's a heavy hitter all around the country, in Canada, Mexico, it doesn't matter. That's probably the most popular and the most legislated. Combustible gas, this is where we're talking about the LELs or methane, propane, or hydrogen. A simple application like this, to give you an example, would be if any of you guys are golfers and you go and get your golf cart and it's battery operated, they have to charge that battery somewhere. This is exactly where that detector would go. Any kind of data center or something like that. The data centers are very much involved in putting in hydrogen detection so their facility does not blow up. It is very costly at that point. So moving on down the list, you have CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide. The rest of the 4, we won't really touch on today, but the top 4, you'll see it quite often. Here's what the detectors look like. Pretty much all of the detectors have an option for a white housing. The CO2 and the O2 models, they come default to white housings just because of the common applications. So we're talking, labs, offices, those type of places where aesthetics are somewhat important. Even some type of a hospital application, you typically see a white detector face instead of that dark gray. But on each of these detectors, you have 2 dry contact relays. One's a 5 amp, one's a 1/2 amp. The 5 amp is for a low alarm. The 1/2 amp is for high alarm. Typical installation on these 2 is a low alarm is going to be tied to your fire panel. And then the 1/2 amp alarm or the high alarm is going to be tied to another zone in your fire panel for your emergency protocols, which is evacuation, fire department, whatever. The next one down is a 4 to 20 milliamp output. This is more of a communication protocol found in the HVAC world, but it's extremely common in the gas detection world. It is basically a linear increase. As your gas rises, so does your milliamp outputs. It's probably the easiest way to determine the level of gas concentration per your output. So a lot of people like to use that because it gives an actual scenario of what your gas concentration is at instead of just a dry contact relay. All these detectors are configurable. They're set to OSHA standards. We get the question all the time, is it UL 2034 or UL 2075? UL 2075 is in this line, yes, for the CM6, which is our carbon monoxide version. However, when you get to a short-term sensor life of 2 to 3 years, the 2075 doesn't apply. They look for longer sensor lives there. And the 2034 listing is more for a residential listing, so it's a time-weighted average basis. You do not want to have a time-weighted average basis in a commercial environment, a boiler room, or a garage. That would just cause for some serious life safety implications. So as we keep moving on, we came out this year in February with a new product that's pretty innovative in itself. We've been getting a lot of requests for what's deemed a dual CO and NO2 sensor. This is a common detector that's typically found in vehicle exhaust. The interesting thing that we did with this, we put 2 sensors. So inside the same unit here is 2 sensors, not one. They're both field replaceable. They're both field calibratable, and you can actually, you'll get an end-of-life error code at the end of the 2 to 3 year lifespan. You do not have to replace the whole unit. It is field replaceable entirely. The thing that's really innovative about this product is it runs off a single 4 to 20 milliamp loop. It still has the dry contact outputs as an option. The single 4 to 20 milliamp loop basically takes the highest value of that 4 to 20 milliamp output. So it says here, 4 to 20 milliamp output to control VFDs or send to a BMS. In this case, if the CO is higher than the NO2 in terms of its milliamp output, you're going to see that reading. A lot of people don't do that. You'll have to have multiple outputs or multiple wires for the different outputs in this 4 to 20 case. We were able to come up with a simple way, less wire, less conduit type stuff to help with the cost. Everything that we do here is field calibratable. We like the service side of the business. It helps our, the contractor side of the business out to get back in the field, see your customers, see the end users, and help them out in that time frame. So we offer trainings for those as well for the future. If you guys ever run into calibration issues or you guys like the service side of the business, it is a humongous business opportunity for those that are in the service side. And we do trainings all the time in that case. The last bullet there, if for those that aren't familiar with our control panels, excuse me, we've offered what's called our DVP 120 family control panels. We've increased that product offering into not just an analog setup, but also an addressable setup. So now you can go out and daisy chain your systems. You'll see a little bit more about that in a little bit. Here's a big one. This is probably the product I'm really excited for ADI to get their hands on. This product is a CO2 sensor. It's 0 to 50,000 ppm. It has basically the same outfit as our 6 series, or it does have the same outfit as our 6 series. The application that this would fall into is a couple actually. So the grow facility, which we'll be talking about shortly, as well as the CO2 beverage code. The CO2 beverage code is national. There's 2 versions of it. It's per IFC 2015 and IFC 2018. Basically, it says any soda machine or any beer tap has to have a CO2 monitor. Depending on the type of state, or depending on what state year your state is adopted. So if it's 2015 or 2018, that would determine what detector you got. So we have both options available. This would be the option number 2 for 2018. It really falls into play with exactly what we're seeing through ADI, a lot of gas stations, restaurants, etc. Very excited about this product right here. The big factor here is the end of life is 15 years. So it's going to be around for a while. It uses an infrared sensor technology. It's something we've been waiting on for a little while. So we're very, very excited about it. Moving into the control panel. So a lot of people or contractors that are installing these types of systems, they see a lot of standalone detectors. If they use more than 3 detectors of the same type, so you have 3 CO detectors in one area, we typically will start to recommend using a control panel of some sort of ours. And what happens here is this control panel, the DVP stands for Detection and Ventilation Panel. So you can use that in many different ways, but there's 3 dry contact relays on the bottom of this. So we see a lot of these panels being sent to the fire panel with a single location of what's going on in the detector world. So if you send our detectors to the fire panel, the fire panel is not going to be able to determine what the value is, what the concentration is, or what the issue is outside of it just getting a dry contact closure. This control panel offering allows you both assets. It'll give you a local reading and it'll tell you which detector is having the issue, as well as send that same signal to your fire panel or security panel for that matter. It is just something that we're seeing a lot of usage in like a fire truck house, an ambulance bay, Amazon's, FedEx's, across the board. And then the last 2 bullets there, the DVP 120B, that's more of an HVAC building controls type communication protocol. Believe it or not, ADI has sold quite a few of those. Very impressed with that. It's something that is, if you take Modbus, it's basically another language like Modbus. It just is different. The last one down there, Title 24, that's more for the guys in California. Title 24 compliance with an addressable system and an analog system. So we're meeting the standards there with your energy efficiency standards along the way. So our innovation is up to date. And in fact, we're coming out. In fact, it was released last month with DVP 1200. And what this product is it's an expandable panel of up to 192 sensors. Prior, we were only able to do around 99 as a full system. So when you're talking your high rises, you're talking your massive Amazons, your UPSs. I know out in the Central Valley out in California, there's UPS and Amazons popping up pretty much everywhere. Those type of facilities that are hundreds of thousands of square feet, this would be the type of panel you would use. There's multiple outputs on this, whether you're looking for expandable relays. So we can do up to 8 off of the panel, and we'll have an extra set of 2 for remote relays where you can tie in a remote relay in a certain zone, et cetera. It's NEMA 4. It's got event logging, which is very important with gas detection now. That's starting to become a pretty big trend. The difference is it doesn't have data logging. There's a difference. So in the event of an event, whether that be a low alarm, a trouble, a high alarm, or a calibration, it records that information. It will not record if something just peaks above, 6 ppm of carbon monoxide. It doesn't record that, but it will record every event. And that's a very big thing to know. The other thing that I want to talk about when we're getting into these are the types of outputs. The one thing, we have all of this on our data sheet, first of all. So these control panel data sheets, they're broken down as such. Pretty easy to read. If you're looking for a specific output, you just associate that with the right panel. So going from top to bottom, you got your analog connections, you got your digital, total zones, which is becoming a big issue. And then your relays, your outputs, which are, your single 24 volt DC outputs, your backend outputs. And now we're getting into more of the VFD or the ventilation side of control, which is your 4 to 20 milliamp outputs. Again, that's that linear output that'll give the gas concentration per its output. Now, as we keep going down, you're going to see Title 24. Title 24 is very specific. For those that are in California on this call, if you have questions about it, please give us a call. We have to deal with Title 24 all the time, but it's specifically towards California. We do see that trend moving a little bit east slowly, but it will start to move east with the energy efficiency standards, so we have met that. Again, the only panel that we offer that's NEMA is going to be that 1200. Everything else is, I think it's, I'm not sure exactly what the other ones are listed at, but we can get that information. So just so you know, anytime you move into our detectors, this is what the backside of them look like. On the top there, you're going to have a 6 series. The backside of that, you're going to have 2 different terminals. On the left, you have a 4 to 20 milliamp output. You also have the power terminal. And then on the right are your dry contacts. The one thing that we stress, and the reason why we put this slide in here, is anytime you have an addressable system, which is going to be the bottom detector, what we do is we take our Modbus adapter, we plug it into the detector, it takes an analog connection and makes it addressable. It still leaves you with those dry contacts. So for local notifications, so your local horn strobes, or maybe it's a local fan, or maybe a local switch, or whatever the type might be, that option is still available. So a lot of people have that question. It's pretty unique in how we did it and how we came across it, but it's still there. Again, this allows you for the addressable side on the bottom there, where you can daisy chain or connect them in series. Pretty common accessories. The top left has been our most popular by far. Just so you know, the horn strobe offering that we do carry has a temporal 4 built into it as an option. Default is just continuous, but you have a temporal 4. So for those that are not familiar, temporal 3 and temporal 4. Temporal 3 is for smoke. So in your house, a smoke detector goes off, it'll beep 3 times. Temporal 4, it's going to be for carbon monoxide. It'll beep 4 times. That's the difference here. So in the commercial world, we're seeing a huge trend pick up where they're demanding a temporal 4 output. And these horn strobes have that. We do not have the green anymore. The green has been discontinued as far as like 2 weeks ago. But every other color is available. We do offer power supplies with these addressable systems. So, I mean, again, it's something that we do carry. It just allows for the full package. We also do have the test gas and the calibration kits. Pretty much anytime you need a quote, you're going to see these on there. We do recommend to test these. AHJs, inspectors, they will make sure somehow that you prove the gas detection system works. Some are a little bit more stringent than others, but we do have test gas or cal kits available. And then the last two to talk about are the duct mount or the weatherproof housing kits. Duct mount's pretty explanatory itself. I'm going to jump to that weatherproof housing kit for a minute. Anytime you have a garage, as an example, that's going to get washed down, we recommend this weatherproof housing kit. It is something that protects against direct spray and or debris. So it's something that we're seeing a big uptick on as well. Now, let's get into the applications. Give me 1 second here. All right, so a growing trend. Being in the state of South Dakota, we're very centralized. We're very much let's say a right-wing state, if you will.
And so to see this, I'm coming from California, I grew up in California and I moved out to South Dakota a few years ago, but literally could have told all my friends in California, South Dakota would be the last state on earth to pick this up. Well, a month ago, the state passed everything with flying colors, medicinal, medical, or both, or recreational for that matter. So it's coming. I've got a slide here to kind of prove it. And basically what we're going to talk about is what they're doing, what they're needing. It's a very big industry for those that are involved with it. There's two parts. There's the grow side and there's the extraction side. On the extraction side, we didn't hit that a ton today, but we have product for it. We have product for that entire side of things. The biggest part though is the grow. So moving forward, here's the slide I want to show you. And I know it might be kind of small, so I'll kind of help you out here. But the breakdown in the US looks like this. The states that are in gray, basically it's fully illegal. So you got Idaho, Wyoming, Kansas, Tennessee, I think that's Mississippi and South Carolina. Those are fully illegal states as far as marijuana growth or consumption is consumed. Now, obviously the darker states, let's just talk about Washington and Oregon for a matter, fully legalized. And what that means is that you can grow, sell, they could be using it for CBD oils, anything of that nature. If you're in the green category, whether it's a darker green or a lighter green, there is some type of a legalization there, and it's most likely that people are growing the plants there for sure. And why is this important? So a lot of these places that are growing the marijuana, let's take out CBD for a minute, but just the marijuana side of things or the cannabis side of things, what they're doing is they're growing it and they have to have CO2 injection inside of these plants. And we're going to get into this a little bit, but I just want to give you guys a good idea that it is pretty national for the most part. And it is a very, very lucrative business for those that are building these buildings as far as the contractor side as well. We get calls on it probably 2 or 3 times a week. And it's all different locations. They're all over the place. But the biggest thing is there's not a ton of legislation in it right now. And this is why we're going to have this top conversation today, is because of why they want our type of product, even though there's no legislation. So some facilities may consist of both the grow facility and the extraction side. The extraction side is where they're extracting the certain oils out of the plants to get the CBD type effects. We can dive into as much as you want. We've got a ton of information on it. I could probably talk about this for quite some time just based on the amount of information we have on it, but I want to make sure we stay on task. So moving into it. Okay, so the current methods of growing this cannabis or industrial hemp, which is, I guess the politically correct term is to utilize a CO2 enrichment value point, meaning these people that are growing these plants are injecting CO2 into these buildings at a certain rate. So the number is 1,100 to 1,500 ppms as a standard of CO2 being injected in these rooms. So what happens if it goes too low? Well, they're not getting their bang for their buck. And what I mean by that, if they're sitting between 1,100 and 1,500 ppm of CO2, they're getting the maximum growth rate out of their plants, depending on what type of plants they have. A typical number is 30% more effective growth rates. And if they're trying to turn these over every 6 months, every 3 months, the growth rate is very, very important. So they really want that to be above 1,100. And the reason why they don't want it over 1,500 is a couple reasons. One, you start getting into personnel issues, like life safety issues. You know, too much CO2 is considered an asphyxiant and it can suffocate people. It can also kill the plants if it gets too high. So they want to make sure there's a fair trade-off, and they want to have a detector that can balance between those two. When you get into CO2, there's so many applications with CO2 right now, but this is probably the biggest trend one. CO2 can be stored in a vacuum jacketed cryogenic liquid cylinder or in your typical gas cylinders. And then any kind of connection point from there on out is typical for an actual leak. And that's kind of how we base it off of in terms of where they're storing their tanks. If they have a big grow facility room, let's say it's 20,000 square feet, we're going to go off the square foot coverage. We're not going to go based upon one every, just a random number, but we do have some science behind it. The big thing that we base that number off of is ventilation. So there is a difference between a storage room of CO2 tanks and where the CO2 is actually being thrown into. Again, just to reiterate that, our connection points in the storage room is where we're going to monitor if there's multiple storage points, where there's connections of valves, there's turns, there's 90-degree elbows, whatever the case may be. We want a detector to be somewhat in the area of that area. Now in square footage, if you're talking 100,000 square feet, we got to measure it based on square footage. And that's how we would go about this. So there's multiple scenarios. If you guys have projects like this, you got them, you got PDFs of specs or whatever the case may be, we can help lay something out for you. We can help give you kind of a recommendation, however that looks. Let's see if I missed anything here. Okay, so another big thing with these type of applications is the other gases that are being forgot about. If CO2 is being generated, if it's not just brought in, it's being done by a fossil fuel combustion. So carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide can actually be produced because of this. So CO and NO2 are a big factor as well. So just know it depends on how they're bringing in their CO2. If they're just buying it from a supplier and the CO2 is sitting there being pumped into a room, that's one thing. But if they're generating their own CO2, that is a whole nother ballgame of detectors. Now we need CO2, CO, and NO2. So there's a lot of opportunity here for multiple gases. When you're talking CO2, here's the health effects. This gets into more of the life safety type products. Standard air, if you're sitting in your room right now, you're looking at that top level, anywhere from 350 to roughly 1,000 ppm. I would say the top two. I would say when you get to the 1,000 to 2,000 marker, after a while, and I'm saying 8 hours, right? The exposure limit over 8 hours, you probably start to breathe a little bit heavier, maybe not noticeably, but you will be breathing a little bit heavier. When you get into 2,000 to 5,000, that's where you're going to start seeing a lot more effects in terms of the headaches, the drowsiness, that type of thing. And anything over 5, it's downhill from there. We're talking loss of plants, loss of people. It's just not a good thing. So all of our monitors have some type of a basis as a low level at 5,000. Some top out at 5,000. That's the max range it has. Just because once you get to 5,000, it can create a whirlwind of issues. So Joe Cameretta just popped in and said, do you see Halo System as a competitor? I know a little bit about Halo System. I know I've seen them on specs. I would say no as far as a competitor. I feel like we would tie right in along with them if it's the Halo that I'm thinking of. And the reason for that is I'm pretty confident they're kind of more of a sample draw type system. I will have to do some research on that, but I can get you an answer. Again, I'm ad-libbing on that because I just saw a spec 2 weeks ago with Halo on there, and I thought it was a sample draw type system. But I will get you an answer for that for sure. All right, so product layout and design. This is where we kind of, I would say we offset a lot of our opponents or our competitors. If you've never tried dialing our tech support, I just challenge you to do so. They're live. They're going to answer your call. They're going to get you an answer within hopefully an hour, depending on the system you have or whatever your problems are. But they are pretty top notch. And I'm not boasting about it because I was a part of that tech team for a long time. And that's just something that Macurco as a company has really put a lot of pride in. So this comes down to the product layout and design. So if you know what's happening with the detectors out in the field as a technician or as a technical support specialist, let's call it that, you can kind of get a good feeling on how these things are laid out and what it starts to look like. So we've all kind of gone through this process of being technical support to a product layout and design. And what I mean by that is if somebody gets a spec and it's a design build, or an engineer maybe overspec'd it and put in an extra 15 detectors where it wasn't needed, or maybe is missing a gas. Like we'll do our best to catch most of that. Obviously, we get a ton of plans sent our way, but we would love to have the opportunity to just say, okay, yeah, this looks good. This is how many detectors. This is what we recommend. And typically, we'll give you an option for a system or a standalone setup. So if it's a few detectors here and there, we'll give you both options. If it's a big system, we just did a grow facility that had, I think, 100 CO2 detectors and a bunch of CO monitors. Like we're going to tie that into our panel just so it limits the conduit and the wiring capabilities that you'll have as a contractor. So you're not spending a ton of labor and time on that fact. Most of our products, again, have a square foot coverage range. We base it on airflow. We base it on where you're mounting it. So if you're mounting it to a wall, your square footage gets cut in half. If you're mounting it in a pillar or a column of a room, you'll get that full coverage. Is there a science behind it? I mean, technically, if you look at a sensor, the sensor's covering about 1.25 inches. But with all the legislation on airflow and air movements, all of our competitors and us, they all follow that same connotation. So that's kind of how we go about that portion of it. One thing that we will stress is anytime you have a specific system that needs to be tied to a BMS, a BAS, or maybe just your standard fire panel, we just want to know what kind of outputs you are requesting. That is the biggest thing. If it doesn't list it on the spec, that's our #1 question. So, and it also depends on what state you're in, depending on the code. But for the most part, we just like to know what kind of outputs. So to give you a good synopsis of what a grow facility looks like. So it might be kind of small for you, but this is actually a spec we received a few weeks ago. Going back to the grow facilities, these are humongous plants, and this is just a standard size one. But going from left to right, on the top there, you've got all these mature plants, right? So that's where they're going to grow. A lot of CO2 injections are there. In this case, what we did is we had a horn strobe. That's the blue squares that you see listed there. Horn strobes are all over the place in these buildings or applications. The way we did this is we measured it by square foot coverage. So each room's roughly 10,000, 11,000 square feet on the top there. But then you bump it down. If you go to that bottom part, you're going to see the nursery 1B, the nursery 1A, and the nursery stock. These are also very, very important because this is where the plant life, if you want to get a little nitty gritty, is very important for the overall growth of the plant. This is kind of like the toddler or the childhood of a human being. It is the imperative part of the whole process. If they have an extraction lab, which in this case is just to the right of the nursery stock applications, the extraction lab is typically a class 1 div 1 facility or area, so explosion proof. We outfitted that as well with an LEL monitor. But to give you an idea, this is what we look at on a general basis. So if you're not familiar with these applications or you're not running into them, I can promise you will in the near future or in the next coming year or two. But we love these opportunities. They're really, really good for us. And it helps to show our side of things of what we can help you guys with as contractors. So the next one, which is probably what Macurco holds its hat on the most outside of our residential line, the vehicle exhaust. And we're talking parking garages, maintenance bays. We're talking car dealerships, which are huge for us right now. I don't know how many car dealerships we've dealt with in the past couple months with all this COVID going around. But car dealerships are definitely still up and roaring. The other one that we're seeing a lot of are bus garages. And what I mean by that is this is what they're going to fill their tanks. They're going to basically do any kind of maintenance. These bus garages are huge, and they're typically found with a huge fire alarm system or security system. Most of the time not found in the best areas of town, so they have these elaborate systems a part of it. But the bus options are humongous. So anytime you deal with an Amazon, anytime you deal with a FedEx, UPS, a bus depot, please let us know. We'd love to help you out with this. To add a little bit more flavor on this, we obviously are a life safety device, but typical, and I see typical, is we can turn around your energy savings or your customer's energy savings within the first year of the installation of this system. One thing that I'd never really thought of was the noise control part of it. It actually happened here in Sioux Falls where we got a good taste of it. But if you have a garage with a couple of huge fans, louvers, or dampers, and there's tenants within 20, 30 yards of those fans on the other side of the wall, it is actually quite loud, and it can really cause a damper for the building owner or the actual tenant that's living there as well. So it's something that it saves on there. And it also is compliance. So it's International Building Code. I know NFPA came out with something this year. So for the most part, this is where we sit. We sit here every day. I deal with garages or some type of vehicle exhaust system pretty much regularly. All right. So our most common detector, again, is the carbon monoxide. And you're talking, again, those same applications. Let me see what time I got real quick. Okay. So I'm going to have to cruise through this one. I've kind of hit on this a few times, but the uniform or the UBC or the IBC, same connotation, but those are the building codes along with NFPA for 2020. Every detector we have follows OSHA standards. So again, those are all customizable. When I say customizable is you can actually set the alarm value. If an engineer specified it to have a little bit higher tolerance for CO and a little bit lower tolerance for NO2, you can do that. Let's see here. All right, so here's the health effects of carbon monoxide. So for those that don't know and don't have a CO monitor in your home, you'll never know CO is there. It's odorless, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, and you can't see it. So once it gets to 200 ppm or more, over the course of a couple hours, you're going to start seeing some effects. And so what our detectors are, and this is across the board with any of our monitors, we consider ourselves a low alarm detection company. So in this case, yeah, you can go all the way up to 12,800 ppm. That's fine. But at that point, you really can't do anything. So what we do is we take the low end of that threshold, an OSHA standard, and say, okay, at 200 ppm, we're going to full-blown alarm. Now, you might get headache or dizziness or nausea after a couple hours, but we're already activated within a second of that hitting 200. So your fire department's being called, your evacuation protocols are in place. And we like to have a low level threshold because what we can do is we can do a valve closure, we can do a fan or ventilation activation point. And that's the reason for the low level and the high level differentiation. So if you guys have any questions on that, please feel free. It's actually a pretty common question we get. And then we go into the NO2. So anytime you're dealing with diesel, that is a very common gas in a vehicle exhaust situation. This falls into that combo CO and NO2 unit. So pretty much all the Amazons, FedExes, UPSs, any shipping facility, they will be using the combo sensor. They will be using the CO and NO2 model. It is, I will be honest, our combo model is priced very, very well for the market, especially against our competitors. So feel free to go to ADI and get a quote on that. But for the most part, nitrogen dioxide and CO are one and the same when it comes to vehicle exhaust, especially with all the legislation. I know Illinois just passed something in the past couple of years where they're mandating all vehicle exhausts have CO and NO2. And I think a couple other states in the Midwest, but a lot of the coastal states are already there. Here's what we do. So if you send us a diagram, basically the blue lines or the blue circles are us and the blue squares are us. Everything else was sent to us via spec. This is a very small idea of what we can do, but we would mount it on a pillar column, kind of show you what to do here. As an example, you may look at it and say, well, Brandon, there's some gaps there. There's always going to be a gap or two. The idea behind here is to not put a detector in an area where there's no airflow or where there's going to be a huge concentration of people. So in this case, you may have a little bit gap on the bottom right middle side there. Typically your car is facing inward there, so you're not really worried about it. This is a pretty common idea with what engineers are doing. Some engineers don't like any gaps at all. Hey, and that's fine, not a big deal. It's just gonna drive up the cost a little bit. But overall, it's about life safety. So we do our best to make sure that you guys are taken care of there and you don't have to have any worries when you go out and install the product. Most of the time we want these things mounted at breathing level. So we're talking 4 to 6 feet. If you do go to our competitors, some will say, hey, I want my NO2 up at the ceiling, but my CO at the breathing level. CO and NO2, they kind of disperse evenly in retrospect. So NO2 comes out super hot, so it's going to rise. But by the time it even gets to, your nose, your mouth, it's cooled down. That air has cooled that gas down enough to where it's slowly going to trickle up. Well, our gas detector, if it's sitting at 4 to 6 feet, that's what we care about. We don't care about what people's breathing at the ceiling. And that's where you're going to see that differentiation on our data sheets and everything like that. So we do get that question quite often. Feel free to ask more if you guys have questions on that. I'm going to run through this real quick. Here's an analog version of a system that we did a while back. Again, everything's a home run. So the red squares are going to be your detectors. The lines out there is your conduit and wiring. So this exact same system, we laid it out addressably. And this is what it looks like. You save a ton of money on the wiring, the conduit, the overall labor if you go addressable. So I'll go back to the analog real quick. This is a 4-wire home run. So 2 for power, 2 for signal. And then you go into the addressable and it's just a daisy chain. Obviously, if you guys are doing any kind of addressable systems at all, you understand this, but this is just a good graphic to show you guys the difference and what's important and how we can help save you guys some money. All right, so servicing systems. I'm going to hit on this for a minute. This is the part of the business that is probably the biggest uptick in all gas detection. Doesn't matter who you are, what manufacturer you are, the amount of people needing calibration or servicing or any of that on their equipment because it's been in the field for 5 to 10 years and hasn't been touched is unbelievable. We probably get 5 or 6 calls a week, where, you know, I've ran the East Coast for a long time, so I'm just based in the East Coast at this point. But I get calls in the Northeast all the time where they're like, hey, I've got 10 CM6s, I need them calibrated. They haven't been touched in 4 years. If you guys are a service side business, this is very, very lucrative. You can charge per sensor, you can charge on site fees. You guys can just add it to your contract. It does not matter. But we have all the products offering, or the product offering for you. We also will have trainings for you and your team. If you've got technicians out in the field, we have a certificate that says you're a Macurco certified installation, calibration, and service agent or contractor, I think is what it says. We have all that as long as you take this course. And the course is really just to get an AHJ inspector kind of off your back if they're saying, hey, who gave you the right to touch this product? It happens, especially in New York. If you're in Nassau County, it happens all the time. Florida, we're seeing it quite often. Georgia, we're seeing it often. And then California obviously is the same thing. So, but everything's here. The one thing I do want to stress is there's a difference between testing and calibrating. A test is just to see if the sensor is recognizing gas. A calibration is to make sure the sensor and the circuit board are speaking the same language. It's very different, just so you guys know. Here's our calibration process. I'm not going to go through the calibration process with you, but I'm going to show you basically, it takes about 1.5 minutes to do this per detector. You got on the bottom right there, you have your canisters of gas. You've got a regulator and tubing. You connect that little orange hood to your sensor, or if it's gray hood, in this case, could be whatever one. Connect it right over your sensor and you start your calibration process. Again, it takes about 1.5 minutes. It's in and out. It's pretty efficient. The detector tells you if you passed or failed. If you've ever failed, call our tech support. Our tech support number is right there. It's on bullet number 9, 844-325-3050. They will answer your call. All right. So going back to the servicing thing, there's a few slides in here because it is very lucrative for you and your company if you guys are on the service side. This is one of my main missions as the national guy, is to get as many companies that are contractors involved on the training side for this commissioning business as possible. It is a very big need, and with the amount of installed base we already have throughout the country, it is just going to be, it'll be very nice to have more people able to calibrate these products. So we offer webinar and on-site training if available. The certificates are available for anybody who attends these classes or trainings. And then you will automatically get added to our list of authorized service agents for your specific area, whatever jurisdiction you're in. So for Massachusetts, we just did one 2 weeks ago. And now any call that I get, they're, you know, on a list of 2 or 3 companies. So it's something to very, very lucrative to look at, and it does help. Just an idea on what people are doing is they're documenting what the information is, how many sensors, the sensor type, the date codes. These are all just little bullets that go into what to look for when you service these products. It gives you a ton of information. It gets you on site. It gets you in the customer's face really and says, okay, now your gas detection is taken care of. What about your fire panel? What about your smoke detectors, your heat detectors, whatever the case may be? It's just a big benefit. So we've seen these before. We put it on here just to give you guys a little bit of information on it as well. This is one of the last slides. Why Macurco? First and foremost, we're made in America. Everything is built and shipped out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. When I say our lead times are quick, I can tell you our main competitors right now are looking at a 4 to 8 week lead time. We are sitting at 2 to 3 business days, and it's not because we're not busy. We actually just had one of our biggest months ever last month. We've had that 2 to 3 day lead time for going on ever since I started back in 2014. So ADI's got a good stock on a lot of products. We don't recommend to stock certain products. So if you're looking for something that's not recommended to stock, ADI will get it within a couple days. Customer service, again, that falls right into our technical support as well. If you dare to try, give them a call. I mean, I think we'll hold our hand pretty good. So our pricing is really good. Again, you guys just saw some of our new products that are coming out or they're already out. The one thing that we want to do is we want to earn your business by just showing you what we can do. If you guys have any questions, projects, anything that pops up, we'd love to help. Again, Sarah Lindquist is the ADI let's just say liaison, if you will, or the manager of ADI. We want her to be affiliated with anything that's going through their business. And then as a backup, you guys could use me. I'd love to help in any way. I've been doing this for a little bit now and understand pretty much any application. So again, based out of South Dakota, we're here to help, and fixed gas detection is what we do, and that's what we focus on. So I appreciate you guys' time. Sarah, if you have anything, please feel free at this point.
Well, thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate that. Like Brandon said, I am the account representative for ADI, and my focus is truly a white glove service. And this is what I believe in. And so one thing you want to keep in mind is we talked about our technical support team, and he dared you to call them along with our customer service. My goal is to call you back as soon as possible. So just keep that in mind. We do have, I'm reiterating that 2 to 3 day lead time, which is fantastic. But if you have questions, concerns, need some answers, if I don't know the answer, I'll find out. But call me directly at 605-951-9615 or email me. You will get a response quickly. That's my goal. Other than that, Brandon, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, ma'am. Thank you for your time, Michael. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you both for this.